Welcome to this new asynchronous video of the course How to Read and Write a Scientific Paper. The subject of this video is how to select the journal. It is a very relevant question because, as you can imagine, selecting the most proper journal means also addressing the most proper audience and, moreover, getting a feedback from the journal that matches our expectation. It is not an easy question. Usually, what I would like to suggest to my student is to refer to their advisor for selecting the most proper journal. But on the other hand, it's also advisable that you contribute to the discussion with your advisor. So it is not just a blind referral to the person who advised you. I suggest that you bring your own contribution to the discussion. And in order to do that, of course, you need to get information on how this selection of the most proper journal should be made. This is precisely the purpose of this video. I'm not going into the fine details of how a journal is evaluated, how the scientific community rates and qualifies a journal, because this is a long subject. The purpose of this video is to give you some preliminary information. And also, you know better than me that you have a lot of more opportunities over the web by using search tools or using artificial intelligence to get details about what I'm saying. First of all, I would like to say that the selection of the journal must be supported by several criteria. And the main criteria is, of course, addressing the most proper audience, because this allows you to make the best from your paper, to target the best from your paper in terms of contribution to scientific development. This also implies that you get your paper read by the people who can increase its reputation. Therefore, the scientific content of your paper must be the first criterion and has to be used by considering also the reputation of the journal and the way in which your paper is reviewed. But there are other criteria that you should take into account. For instance, how to get the best from your paper in terms of development of your career, because development of your career in turns means opportunities, further opportunities to contribute to research development. The first thing that I would like to say, in order then to prepare the discussion about criteria, is that we can broadly subdivide journals into two categories. The first category is that of the bibliometric indexed journals versus the category of non-bibliometric indexed. I would like to start with the latter, or I would like to start by talking about non-bibliometric indexed journal. What does it mean to be bibliometric indexed? It means that the journal is included in databases which provide citation metrics, rankings, and performance indicators. It is not included there. So once again, non-bibliometric indexed journals means that the journal is not included in citation databases that track measurable impact indicators. Therefore, you cannot use these databases in order to get information. You have to find alternative ways. What are the alternative ways? It's first of all the reputation of the journal collected through the opinion and consideration of the journal by the scientific community. And therefore you should refer to your peers, your colleagues, to get information on the reputation, because our target remains to address a journal with a high reputation. So if we cannot get measures of reputations, then we have to collect consideration by people. A good indicator is the composition of the editorial board of the journal to get an indication of reputation. So if you look at the editorial board, you may see that are present very well-known scholars, for instance. A second indicator is the reputation of the papers that are published there. Look at the list of references of your own paper. Do you include many citations to a given journal? It means that that journal provided a good support to the development of your own research, and therefore you may target this journal with high priority, the journals that are cited in your list of references. And then there is the reputation of the publisher. You look at the publishing house and you evaluate its reputation by discussing with peers, with colleagues. There are, in principle, several non-numeric ways of getting useful information, and you should refer to your specific discipline and to, of course, the advice of your supervisor in order to find a list of priorities. I am aware that I am not giving enough information in this discussion today in order to support your selection of the most reputable non-bibliometric indexed journals. But I'm sure that if you refer to your supervisor and you refer to your colleagues, you may find all the information that you need, which unfortunately I cannot explain in detail because I cannot refer to a database. I cannot refer to a quantitative source of information. In the category of instead the bibliometric indexed journals is a different story. These journals are evaluated by data sets, data repositories, and associations, which provide a catalog for these journals and provide metrics to quantify their impact. These are major databases that provide citation metric, rankings, and performance indicators. There are two main databases we refer to. The first one is Shimago/Scopus, and the second one is Clarivate Analytics/Web of Science. Let me explain better. Shimago is a database that computes metrics by relying on the contributions and data stored in the Scopus database. So for this reason, I said Shimago/Scopus. Similar reasoning for Clarivate Analytics, which is often called also Web of Science. These are, as I said, the two major databases. They provide similar information because they use metrics to quantify the impact and therefore reputation of a journal. They use different metrics. I'm not going into the details of how these metrics are computed because these details can be easily found over the web. I will make clear what is the name of this matrix, and if you need, and also I will make clear what are the features of this matrix, basically what is the information they are using to rank the journals, and in this way, as I said, if you want additional details, you can easily find them. Now, let's start with Shimago Scopus, and let me refer, now I need to share my screen, and just 1 second, here is screen sharing, it's now you should see in a second my screen, and then here you should see my screen with the Shimago opening page. See the web address, very simple, www.shimagojr.com, very easy. Now, this is the opening page. Here you are allowed to directly enter your journal title if you want to get information about a specific journal. On the other hand, you may also refer to this menu, Journal Rankings. Let's click over it, and then we get these rankings of 32,000, more than 32,000 journals. Indeed, a huge number. And you see here the list. There are, of course, several pages. I'm not browsing everything here. Now, these journals are ranked against a specific indicator. And in this case, you see that here, the ranking in the opening page is done based on the what is called SJR. It's the Shimago Journal Rank Indicator. It is, as you can read here, a measure of journal's impact, influence, or prestige. It expresses the average number of weighted citations received in the selected year by the documents published in the journal in the 3 previous years. Let's forget about the details. What is important to note here is number of weighted citations. So SJR is computed based on the number of weighted citations. It means number of citations divided by the number of published papers. And you can see that the first one is a journal in the subject area of medicine, and you get the SJR. Then it's indeed a huge amount, number of weighted citations. And then there are other indicators, other metrics, the H-index. Let's forget about the details of how it is computed. But of course, if you go with the mouse here, you get the details. And then total documents in 2025, total documents in the 3 previous years, total references, total citation, and citable documents, etc. And you see, citable documents in the past 3 years is quite a low number. It means that the journal doesn't publish a lot of papers. It's highly selective. You also see an indicator of here, the quartile. Q1 means quartile 1. Let's put the mouse over there. And this is the indication of the best quartile for all subject categories. What does this mean? First of all, what does it mean, quartile? Let's suppose that you have a list of 100 journals, and the list is ranked according to a given matrix, in this case SJR. Now you have in the first 25 places, over 100, you have the journals that, according to that ranking, are in the first quartile. It means the first quarter. And then from 26 to 50, you have the second quarter, etc. So when you see quartile 1, it means that the journal is among the best 25 of that subject category. What is the subject category? It's a classification of journals according to the subject, the main subject of the journal. It can be medicine, but usually is more detailed. It can be, in my case, in my field, water resources. And therefore, you have this subject category, which it's a kind of grouping according to disciplines. A journal may belong to several, more than one subject categories. And therefore, the quartile is computed inside the subject category. We will talk again about subject category in a moment, because it's also useful to refer to subject categories for identifying our preferred list of journals. Because to browse 32,000 journals, we need a kind of classification. And then you have the other journals following here. And the indication of the quartile is extremely important, because it means that, it means a classification of reputation. And several selection committees indeed use the quartile of the journal in order to make a selection. With it's not the only criteria, because it would be really odd to use only one numeric criteria and a ranking, a journal ranking, to make a selection. But in some cases, it is anyway considered among the different criteria to make a selection. And therefore, it's an important information. Keep into account this quartile is an important information. Now, let's look at the subject categories, because indeed, this is something that helps a lot in identifying a list of priorities for targeting our paper. Now, here you see that the menu allows you to subject subject areas and subject categories. So if you look at the subject areas, you see they are quite broad. And we may refer to, for instance, to decision science, or arts and humanities, better. And you get here in arts and humanities a list of journals. And this list includes, let's see, the numbers, 5,000 journals. It's still quite a long list. The subject categories usually are more specific, and therefore, for instance, let's look at philosophy here. Then we get art and humanities and philosophy. And then we went down to 800 journals. Let's look to another category within art and humanities, history. So history, we have 2,000 journals. Okay, let's find a category with a reduced number, like museology. Let's see, museology has 101 journals. So nice, because it's close to 100, which is the number that I used to make to provide you an example. Now, let's look at the list. So the most reputed, according to SJR here, is the International Journal of Heritage Studies. Let's browse the list down, and let's look at page 6. Page 6, we have only one journal, quarter 4. This is what I expected. Page 5, a lot of journals, quarter 4. Page 3, we are quarter 2. You see different colors, and quarter 3 identify different quarters, which is, as I said, an important information. Now, let's look at the International Journal of Heritage Studies. Is the most, the journal with the highest reputation. The SJR is 1.034. And here you see that the journal is published in the United Kingdom, is published by Taylor and Francis. It's another important information, the reputation of the publisher. and which we discussed when we mentioned the non-bibliometric indexed journal. I said, look at the reputation of the publisher. Even in this case, for the bibliometric indexed journals, the reputation of the publisher is a useful information. And because the reputation of the publisher has an implication on the visibility. And visibility then of your contribution. You should also look at how the publisher is popular in your discipline. You should look also at the open access opportunities, because papers can be published open access, which means that everyone can read them, or can be published restricted access, which means that only subscribers to the journal can read them. There is an increasing demand by funding agencies nowadays to publish open access papers, and therefore you have to look at the open access options. All the journals, all the publishers offer open access options. What is very different is the fee, the author processing charges that you have to pay. You know, some journals have required several thousands of euros to publish open access, and therefore this is another information that you have to take, which needs to be considered in your choice, in your selection of the journal. And then you get here the subject area and categories the journal is included in. And so you have here art and humanities, business management and accounting. It's useful because it gives to you an idea of the readership. And then you get the SJR and the H-index, so two metrics. You have the bibliometric information, ISSN, and you get also an indication of the scope, links, direct links to the home of the journal. And then here you have an indication of the quartiles in the different years, depending on the subject categories. And then other information about open access, about the number of documents that were published by this journal, and some also references, questions and answers from people. You see that it's a lot of information, which allows you to understand, to estimate the reputation of the journal based on several indicators. And this is what I highly suggest to you. Don't consider a single indicator like, for instance, SJR, for reasons that we will also discuss in a moment later on. Consider several multiple indicators in order to get prepared for the discussion with your advisor. And once again, look at the list of references of your paper, because this is the first indicator of what are the most relevant journals to your research. So look at the list of references and look at the list of published papers into the journals that you put in high priority. So let's suppose that you want to publish, we want to give high priority to this International Journal of Heritage Studies. Look at recent content, and in order to really make sure that you are selecting the most proper publication venue. And also this looking at recent contents is also useful because you may see missing references. So this is what the Shimago Scopus provides. A similar information is given by Clarivate. So if you go to jcr.clarivate.com, you get this opening page where you can find immediately with the search the journal you are looking for. But again, let's use the menus and let's click over journals. And you see here a list of 22,000 more than 22,000 journals. First consideration, you may remember from Chivago Scopus, let's go back here, and let me go back to the first page of Chivago Scopus, to the opening page, and it's here. Okay, and the journal rankings. You may remember here we got 32,000 journals indexed here. In the journal citation report by Clarivate, it's only 22,000. And this brings, of course, forward the question why they are different, and given that they are different, how do they select the journals to index? They have their own criteria. Basically, they apply a pre-selection. They exclude the journals which they believe are not relevant, and they end up with the list. Usually, they require that the journal has an international diffusion. Not always, but in some cases, they require it. They require usually that the journal is peer-reviewed, and they require that the journal is adhering ethics principles. But actually, how the selection is made, the criteria that they use are not completely transparent. And therefore, this is the reason why Clarivate is more selective. It has its own criteria that make that end up with a more restricted list. However, if you look at the journal with the highest reputation, you will see that there is a large similarity between the information that are given by the two catalogs. Even in this case, I think it's nice, it's easier to look at categories because it restricts the set of the journals that we want to discuss. And then if you look over categories, you see here, and you see here the various categories. Let's look at economics and business to get a different reference. And here you see subcategories. And let's look at, for instance, at forestry. And we get a subject category which includes 92 journals. On purpose, I tried to select a journal with a subject category with a reduced number of journals. And here you see also the citable items, other sources of information, but let's click over forestry. And then we get here the list of the journals, 92. The most popular one is the current forestry report. What information do they provide? Let's see here. Okay, there is the ISSN and the edition of the database that is considered. We don't go into details here. This is not important for us. And then they give the total citations. They give the quartile in the subject category. You see Q1, 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 and if you browse down, you get to Q2, etc. And they give the journal impact factor. JIF stands for journal impact factor. It's the analogous of SJR. They are computed in a slightly different way. So they collect, they exploit similar information, but not precisely the same information. Usually, the ranking in Clarivate is presented according to the journal impact factor. You read here 2024 because it is issued once a year, and the journal impact factor of 2024 was issued in 2025. Now we are expecting the update in June, more or less. They will release the 2025 journal impact factor. And then there is the quartile. There is another metric presented here, which is, let's see if there is an explanation by putting the mouse over there. But in any case, it's a different metric. We don't need additional details. And the number of citable open access contributions. So journal impact factor, then it's what is used usually to present the ranking. Now let's click over the first one, and let's see the kind of information they provide. So they give the edition of the database they are referring to, the category, and again the publisher, where the country of publishing, the language, and here the journal performance. And you see the impact factor, and the impact factor without self-citations. Self-citations are citations that are given to papers published in the journal by papers published in the same journal. And therefore, usually they are, in some cases, they are subtracted, they are removed. Because they may look a little bit biased. It's like an author citing itself. When we provide our record of citation, if we want to be transparent, we should remove our self-citations. And this is what is done here. And then there is the citable items. So the items, the published papers that contributed to the formation of the journal impact factor. The impact factor is computed, as I said, in a similar way as SJR, is a weighted count, weighted by the number of published papers, count of the citations the journal received in a period of 3 years. And here you see the papers that contributed to that with indication of open access or not. And it's very important information, as I mentioned earlier, because by looking at the subject of the papers that were most cited into the journal, you can derive a very useful information to understand the visibility that your paper may get. And then there is the progress of the journal impact factor into the years, and then there are details on the citation distribution, and there are other details on the open access publications, and then here there is the rank by journal impact factor. And there is also the rank in other subject categories if they are present. Once again, very useful information. And you may ask the question, should we refer then to Shimago or to Clarivate? Short reply, it doesn't really matter a lot. It is similar information. Usually, I refer to just the one. For historical reasons, I tend to refer to Clarivate. But you may also refer to Scopus. It's really the same thing, I would say. It may be interesting to look at both of them if for some reason you don't see a journal in one of the two, and then you may look for the other one. This is what I usually do. One important thing, these two databases are not freely accessible. If you have an account at the University of Bologna, the University of Bologna has a subscription to both of them, and therefore you can use as a username your email address at the University of Bologna and you get in. But if you are not using an institutional account of an institution that has a subscription, then you may end up with only a limited information that is provided, not so extended like you can see over the screen now. This is a kind of limitation. On the other hand, these databases are expensive to maintain them, and of course, this is the motivation why they ask for a subscription fee. Of course, this information is much relevant, but in order to get the best from it, we should also discuss two more things about analysis to make the best use of this information. First of all, let me open a Google page and look for the DORA declaration for scientific assessment. DORA declaration on research assessment. Here it is. It is also called San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment. So what is this DORA declaration? It is a global initiative that campaigns for and supports improving ways we assess research and researchers. Very good. Now, there is, of course, a declaration which we may read, which is not really very long, but I make a synthesis. So let's look at the recommendation then to make a synthesis. The need to eliminate, we are reading here, the use of journal-based metrics such as journal impact factors in funding research, appointment and promotion considerations. The need to assess research on its own merits rather than on the basis of the journal in which the research is published, and the need to capitalize on the opportunities provided by online publication, such as relaxing unnecessary limits on the number of words, figures, and references. So what is the general recommendation? Do not use journal-based metrics such as journal impact factor as a surrogate measure of the quality of individual research articles to assess an individual scientist's contribution or in hiring, promotion, or funding decisions. Let's forget by the other recommendations. It is very clear what the general recommendation says. Who proposed this declaration? A group of scientists, and then they opened for signatures. And there are several institutions, I would say, also funding agencies, I would say most of the most important academic and founding institution at the global level, which signed it. And also individual researchers, a lot of individual researchers signed it. So the large popularity of the declaration indeed allowed them to get to target. Now, it is infrequent to still find the use of journal-based metrics, such as the journal impact factor, for hiring, promotion, or funding decisions. It is fine, they say, to use the journal impact factor for assessing the reputation of a journal, for deciding where to submit, but they would like that institution avoid the use of the journal impact factor for hiring, promotion, or funding decisions. This is extremely important for you. This means that you are encouraged to use the information provided by Shimago Climate Analytics in order to decide where to publish your contribution for your benefit. But be advised that its use by funding agencies or academic institutions for evaluating your future career is discouraged. And I mean, this is just something for which we should be happy of, because it means that your research assessment will be evaluated based on its content, on its real value, not based on the journal it's published on. So in a way, this also relaxes your decision. On the other hand, keep in mind that the selection of the most proper journal is still important for getting the right audience and therefore for getting your research to be recognized. Recognition means that then funding agencies, institutions will have further information to use. So, I mean, selecting the most proper journal is still important. Selection of the most important journal can be done based on the impact factor. On the other hand, just be a little bit more relaxed about the meaning for your future career of the journal. The most important thing is that you publish good science on the proper journal. This is the moral of the story. In any case, I would say that the impact factor is still in some cases evaluated, but not as a single criteria. It may be evaluated for funding decisions, but together with several other metrics. So the message for you is don't refer to SJR or the impact factor alone. Refer to a good set of metrics. This is the first consideration that I wanted to make. Second consideration, you may have heard about predatory journals. What are predatory journals? I asked the question to ChatGPT, and let me see, it's here. I asked the question to ChatGPT, and this is the reply from ChatGPT. You may ask the same question to another artificial intelligence tool, it doesn't matter. By the way, for preparing my lecture, I am using artificial intelligence tool. I think these are very useful, and useful not only for saving part of my work. This is not the purpose. Useful in terms of benefit to students, but, and this is an anticipation of the message that I want to convey to you, which I already mentioned in my previous videos, but you need to evaluate critically what is presented. Okay, so I asked the question, what is a predatory journal? You see the question in the upper part of the screen. A predatory journal, this is the reply, is a publication that presents itself as a legitimate scholarly journal, but primarily exists to collect fees from authors, often article processing charges, without providing the standard editorial and publishing safeguards of real academic journals. So what is the problem here? The problem is that, publishing scientific papers is a commercial activity. Publishing houses are, in most of the cases, commercial enterprises. And therefore, it's clear that they gain benefit by attracting the authors. Here, there is the problem that some publishing houses are accused by the scientific community or by other publishing houses to attract authors by lowering the standard of peer review, and therefore by lowering the quality of the published paper. It means that according to these interpretations, these publishing houses offer easy publication in order to attract authors and therefore to attract benefit, economic benefit. This means that these authors end up with publishing their contribution on a journal that has a low reputation. So this is not for the benefit of the authors, it's for the benefit of the commercial benefit of the publishing house. And for these reasons, they are called predatory journals. You understand that it's a delicate question. So to determine whether a journal is predatory or not, according to this definition, is not easy, because you need the detailed information, and it is a bit of a subjective evaluation, which should be based on objective criteria. And in most of the cases, these criteria are not really transparent criteria, I mean, used to classify a journal as predatory. No matter of that, there are some group of researchers that have compiled a list of what they consider predatory journals. And indeed, there is information that is spreading about journal alleged to be predatory. And if you look over the web, I don't want to look to it right now, you may find lists or journals named as predatory. You understand that this is very delicate. It's very delicate because, of course, these journals classified as predatory, they refuse to accept this classification. And of course, they instead reply by saying that their review process is rigorous, is adhering to firm ethical principles. And therefore, the discussion about a journal being predatory or not being predatory is a bit controversial. And when a discussion is controversial, you have to be aware of the fact that getting an idea of what's going on is not easy. So I wouldn't make it so easy as this definition that you see over the screen. I mean, or the definition may be fine, but then to apply the definition to obtain a classification is something that is really not easy. And therefore, be careful about this information regarding predatory journals, because it may be that indeed you need to consider this information when deciding to submit to a journal. So it is important that you avoid journals that may undermine your reputation, or let's say, better than it's unlikely that a journal undermines your reputation, but it is likely that a journal doesn't give you the recognition that you may deserve because of the low consideration by the scientific community. But in order to evaluate this information regarding supposedly predatory journals, you have to be very critical. Very critical, refer to your advisor, refer to your scientific community, because it's not simple and it's not fair enough to simply avoid journals that are considered to be predatory. I mean, for the sake of the progress of science, we have to be very careful in making this classification, and we have to be very careful to provide a true interpretation, an interpretation based on the truth, like science should do in any case. Therefore, I wanted to give you this information about journals that are alleged to be predatory, but at the same time, I want to tell you that I basically don't exclude for my list of priorities a journal just because some people think it is predatory. This is not fair enough. It's not good for the progress of science. It's not good for your personal reputation. So it's an information like the other information that we discussed today that you may consider, but in a very critical way. Once that you collected all of this information that we mentioned today, so reputation for non-bibliometric indexed journals, journal rankings for the bibliometric indexed journals. Once that you got aware of the DORA declaration and the supposed presence of predatory journals. At the end of the story, what are the criteria that you should use to make your selection. The criteria, the general and the overarching criteria are first, the scientific value of your paper in reference to the scientific reputation of the journal. Your first target must be the progress of science, to give your contribution to the progress of science, and therefore think at the scientific nature of your contribution, like, is it groundbreaking, or is it a review paper in preparation of follow-up research? Is it a commentary? So evaluate the scientific content and choose the journal with the proper reputation. This is the first thing, the first criteria. Second criteria, which is related to the first, the progress of your career. The progress of your career is essential for the benefit of science, and it's also essential for you to get the conditions to work in the best way. So make the selection of the journal according to your target in terms of progress of your career. Third criteria, your heart, because at the end of the story, science is an art, and therefore your feelings, what you feel inside you, your heart, is really what matters a lot. So if you feel that you have a strong feeling, which maybe you cannot motivate, you cannot find a valid reason for it, you cannot find a scientific reason for it, but you have a feeling bringing you towards a given research topic or a given journal, let's of course consider it. Finally, think overall at the reputation of the journal. So reputation means something that you cannot really quantify with bibliometric indexes. I have some journals which I repute really, I consider really with high reputation, and these journals have not necessarily an high impact factor. So the reputation in your community, the reputation that the journal, your peers assign to the journal, it's also important. Finally, my final recommendation, take it easy, because this is not what makes a difference between a good paper and a paper that is not as good. The difference is done by the content. The difference is done by your creativity, your idea. Of course, choosing the right journal is part of the idea, but it's not really the essential ingredient of a successful recipe. So at the end of the story, take it easy, and keeping you relaxed allows you to be more creative and to complete your paper in the best way. Don't forget that once you selected the journal, you have also to think about shaping your paper accordingly, because journals may have templates, may have format to follow, and of course you need to consider the structure of your paper referring to the journal you decided. Now let me share my screen. Here we are. So stop sharing. So thank you very much once again for attending, and don't hesitate to refer to me should you need any further clarification. Thanks a lot.